Everyone. Today we will be looking at the I-9 tracker integration with Infor. And the agenda, what we have is what is I-9 tracker complete. We'll look at an overview of I-9 tracker integration in GHR and Transition Management. And then we'll go over some of the steps in implementing the I-9 tracker complete. And then at the end, we will have time for questions if you have any. But if you have questions in the meantime, you can put those in the chat. And I have my colleague, Anna Marie Kamaka, that will be monitoring the chat for us. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is I-9 Tracker Complete? I-9 Tracker Complete is an online integration that helps with this to streamline the current process of manually documenting the I-9 forms outside of the system. So a lot of clients right now either use a third-party integration or they actually are manually doing paper forms for I-9. The Form I-9 is used to verify the identity and employment authorization of individuals hired for employment in the United States. All U.S. employers must properly complete the Form I-9 for each individual they hire, which includes citizens and non-citizens. Both employees and employers or authorized representatives of the employer must complete the form. This integration allows new hires, candidates, and resources to electronically complete their Form I-9 during the pre-boarding or onboarding in transition management. So clients that do not currently have transition management would need to implement transition management in order to utilize the I-9 tracker complete. So an overview of I-9 tracker in transition management, as I previously stated, is I-9 forms are used in transition management pre-boarding and onboarding programs to electronically integrate with the third-party tracker I-9 complete. This could replace the need for your other third-party software. If you are currently using another third party, you could come over to Tracker I-9, and it is a seamless integration with Infor. It utilizes a web service call, API, to Tracker I-9 from Infor. It does require separate licenses, which are provisioned by Infor, and you would need to get with your account executive or your customer success manager in order to discuss that with them. Organizations must be using Mingle due to future single sign-on and I-9 provisioning requirements. And it does allow clients to do e-verify through the tracker integration with United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. It does require two different environments, which are provisioned by Infor with I-9 tracker, and that would be your dev and prod environment. The dev, of course, would be used for your testing, and then prod for your production environment. This is an optional functionality used for electronic submission of an I-9 forms. This is not required to use transition management. You can decide that you want to use the manual paper form and then or use a third-party software as you are currently doing. So this is just an example of the steps in implementing Tracker I-9, which was provided by Tracker. So the first task that is actually provisioning the I-9 tracker, which Infor does through an email. And this requires the integration dev and production sites. So that's something that Infor actually does. And then the second task basically is that Tracker provides the configuration keys to Infor, which includes the client ID, the API hash key, the API URL, and the Access Tracker I-9 complete URL. And I'm going to show you where that is actually configured in the system. Tracker also requires a discovery call with the client, and that is set up for initial meeting with Tracker and the business partner or Infor, depending on who you're using. And that they will go into how the employer and e-verify is set up, how I-9 approver roles are set up, and then the Tracker I-9 configure settings, the email alerts that they set up. One of the other tasks is for The Infor side of it, which I will go into, is enabling the Form I-9 integration in GHR Transition Management. And it assumes that you have transition management enabled on your organization, and then entering and saving the site configuration keys that I discussed in task 2. The other tasks are setting up the employers in Tracker I-9, that is a Tracker Corp responsibility, along with setting up the global defaults for all shared clients by Tracker Corp. And then on the Infor side, we will leverage the GHR automated processes to create the work sites, which work sites equal HR locations in GHR, and then creating the I-9 approvers manually for each approver, and then add in the Form I-9 task and associating it to a program in transition management. Do we have any questions right now before I move on?
No, the chat is empty right now.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. Thank you, Anna.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
so some of the setup activities would start with the configuration of the I-9. So in transition management, if you are currently using transition management, there's under setup and configurations, you would go into and select the integrations used by your organization. So you would enable the Form I-9. So you would check the Enable Form I-9 checkbox. Once you do that, then basically this configure would present itself along with the Form I-9 approvers after you configure. So once you go into the configure, you'll set up your configuration parameters based off of the configuration keys that Tracker I-9 provides to the client. So this is just an example that we would have the client ID, the API hash key, your API URL, the access tracker URL, whether you're using email user credentials, you would check that. And then one thing to consider when you're doing I-9 is that the Form I-9 rehire date, whatever date you're using for rehire, whether it be the start date or adjusted start date in GHR, you would need to determine what date you're using for rehires. So you would actually go in and select either the start date or the adjusted start date for that. So once you configure the system, the hash keys and so forth, then you would go in and you would configure your Form I-9 approval roles. So this would then present itself. And then once you click on this, it would actually present a Form I-9 approvers, and you would do a get roles, and it would list the roles that are available. And then you would basically determine what roles you would be using with your organization. So like you would have the advanced user without E-Verify, the intermediate user without E-Verify, the basic user without E-Verify, and then those with E-Verify if you're using E-Verify. And Tracker will go over each one of these with you to let you know what ones your organization may need to use. So setting up on Tracker I-9 and GHR. So in Tracker, they actually have to set up your employer or your organization. They call it the employer, which represents the high level structure of the organization. They manually create this and maintain the employers in Tracker I-9 to identically match the HR organizations in GHR and talent management. If there are multiple organizations using Tracker I-9, then you must set up each as an employer, and you can kind of see what they use. So the employer name in Tracker is the description of the organization. And then you have your external employer ID that is created in Tracker I-9, which is your organization. So your actual, like if you have 10 or 20, or if you use like an abbreviation of your organization like GHC. Okay. So the next thing that you would set up is your work sites. So work sites represent the physical locations within each employer. They are automatically maintained in Tracker. So anytime you create, update, or delete an HR location in GHRTM, then basically that would update Tracker I-9 because of the via the web services call. Now, you can create mass creation of work sites in Tracker I-9, but they all have to be US locations because that's basically what we are doing for the I-9. It's US based only. So they would have to have a location country code of US on the HR location. So in doing the work sites, if the web service results in successful, then it actually creates a tracker response and it's saved on the HR location. But if it's not successful, then it is logged to an I-9 worksite exception log, and you would be able to go in and understand why that was not created. Here's an example of what the HR worksite location is brought back from I-9 Tracker onto your HR location. So you have your worksite name, which equals the description, your external worksite ID, which equals organization and location. And then on I-9 Tracker, they do not have the ID. It's basically created for third-party I-9 worksite ID, which is located here. To create the mass create work site. So when you're creating all of your HR locations that you want to go over to Tracker I-9, you can use the utilities under data maintenance for administrators and run the mass create work sites. And this will create all of your US based work sites via the web service. So the I-9 approvers. So creating the I-9 approvers, also called I-9 managers in Tracker I-9, they represent the employees who are authorized to complete and approve Form I-9s. So for example, I have a client that we did in Ohio that they wanted all of their general managers to basically be an I-9 approver. So we set all of those general managers up as an I-9 approver so that when each one of those employees came into their restaurant, they basically would be able to be an approver instead of having to go to the HR location, which was, you know, at another location. It automatically creates, activates, and inactivates in Tracker I-9 web services as an employee is flagged or unflagged in GHR TM. There is not a mass creation of I-9 managers. Those have to actually be set up on the initial onset via a spreadsheet or manually in each environment by I-9 Tracker. So right now, you would need to basically send I-9 Tracker a spreadsheet, which they do provide, and they will mass load those on their end. So when you do enable the I-9, it actually creates an action over on the resource records. So as you can see, I'm in a resource record, Snicker Wilkerson's, and on the at a glance, there's a create form I-9 approver action. Once you go into that, then basically you would be able to create an I-9 approver. So this form actually populates when you select this action. And then you, under each one of those fields, you would be able to select what you want for that approver, okay? So based on whatever roles that you decided for your organization would present themselves, and then you would select what role that person would be. You also would select what user permissions they would have, whether they have all client access, all work sites for employer, or select work sites for employer. Normally, all client access would be for your administrators, and then the all work sites for employer or select work sites for employer would be for your other I-9 approvers. You also would select the time zone that they're in, whatever time zone, maybe you have different locations so that the I-9 Tracker would know, you know, what time zone that approver is in. So under the employee profile at a glance, the form I-9 approver is actually created, and the third-party I-9 approver ID is presented at that time. In security, the only people that can view or update the I-9 approvers are the HR admin and HR generalists. And the direct supervisors and indirect supervisors can only view this information right here under the at a glance page. So you would see the Form I-9 approver checked, and then the third party I-9 approver ID is presented. Okay, so an overview of the Create Form I-9 Approver is that you get a Create Form I-9 Approver action. The action is available to HR admins and HR generalist roles. It is available when the Form I-9 is enabled and Form I-9 Approver is not selected, and third-party I-9 Approver is not set. The display form for I-9 user provisioning screen upon selecting this action will present. One important thing to note is that you cannot create an I-9 approver unless they have an actor set up with actor identity set up before that, because it looks for that on the I-9 side to bring back that the approver ID from I-9 Tracker. So the Form I-9 approver is created in Tracker I-9 via web service upon the submit. So once you submit it, if successful, the Form I-9 is set to true on the employee, and then the third-party I-9 approver ID and Tracker complete response is saved on the employee. If not successful, then the error message displayed to the user, you'll get an error message, and the Form I-9 approver remains as false on the employee. If the I-9 approver data changes made directly in Tracker I-9. So once you have all of that set up, you need to set up the task for the employee to be able to go in there, or the candidate to actually submit their I-9 form, the section 1. So you would need to set up a task type of Form I-9, which is delivered. It's available to candidate and resource task. You have a configurable administrative instructions to display in the dashboard, which are these right here. You can change this. So if you want it to say something different, you can. There is no acknowledgement or signature that applies to this task type, and the task will be tied to a pre-boarding or onboarding program once you tie it. So this looks, you can kind of see here where I've attached it to a transition program of onboard or onboarding activities. And then you can see here where the task is tied to this onboarding program. This is just a sample of an I-9 task in talent and transition management for employee. What they would actually see, they actually see this form, and it actually asks for the section 1 for them to fill out, which then basically, once they fill out the section 1, an email will be sent to the approver to basically go in and start filling out section 2. So the resources are presented the task during the pre-board and onboarding program and fills out section 1. Once the form is completed, an email is sent. The I-9 approver will need to validate the information presented to them by the resource. The I-9 approver has 3 days from the resource's first date work to obtain this information before it becomes overdue. They will receive emails from Tracker that basically says that they have overdue tasks out there for employees that are overdue for their I-9. Tracker I-9 sends an email confirmation to the I-9 approver when their credentials of username and password are created. Now, one thing to note is that Tracker does require that managers complete Tracker's online or website-based training in order to do the e-verify. That is mandatory on the I-9 Tracker side. Okay, so that is the setup of I-9 Tracker in GHR Transition Management. It's very streamlined. I've done this at several clients and they've been very happy with it. There's not a lot of setup. Tracker's very good at providing the information needed. And it ends up being maybe a 2-week process to get everything set up and actually test it out and making sure that it works in the dev environment. Do we have any questions or anything, or does anybody have any comments?
There are no questions in the chat, but comments would be welcomed.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and Dave, do you want to go ahead and talk about the upcoming Bells webinars?
Yes. Oh, we have a question that just popped up.
Oh,
Yes, too. Okay. Where are the documents required to I-9 stored? Where are the basically, after they're completed, where are they stored?
they're stored in I-9 tracker.
In the separate I-9 tracker
Yes,
software.
in their software, not in GHR.
Cool.
Okay. So,
Are you able to download those documents?
Yes, you are. Administrators have rights to go into I-9 tracker and can go in and download those documents.
Any more questions? Those are definitely good questions.
Yes, they are. Okay, Dave, you want
all
to?
right. All right. Well, Liz, thanks for presenting. That was a great session, and thank you all for attending. If you enjoyed today's webinar, we hope you will consider attending the next scheduled events, which will take place next Friday. Next Friday, we're presenting the following topics: GHR absent management overview and a beginner's guide to IPAs Part 2. If you're interested in attending either, please register via our website or email brian.waters@balesllc.com. As a closing thought, we wanted you to be aware of our Coffee with Consultants offering. If you have any questions about what you saw today or any questions related to anything related to the Infor products that you currently own or are interested in purchasing, please reach out to us via our website. We'll connect with you with a consultant who will spend a half an hour with you at no charge to review anything you want over coffee or tea or whatever your beverage of choice may be. Answers to any questions related to your Infor system will be provided. Thank you again for attending, and I hope you all have a great day.
I have one more question.
Oh, okay.
So real quick, I guess, can you run reports on expiring documents?
Yes, out of tracker I-9.
Okay.
Any more? Well, thank you all for attending, and we hope you will attend our other informational Fridays next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.